Mm.
Hello again, and welcome to One Starfish. Really excited today. We have our first male today. And this guy is absolutely incredible. As you know, our mission is to help change one life at a time. So, when you see value in this, make sure to share it, make sure to rate it, make sure to review it, subscribe, all of that stuff. But today we have Brian Bartes, and he is an author, a coach, a public speaker. Most importantly, he's an amazing husband, father, and friend. And I've had the opportunity to meet him and get to know him over the last couple of years. And I'm really excited for him to share some of his knowledge and wisdom with all of you guys today. So thanks so much for being on here, Brian.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Angela. It's great to see you again, and I'm really honored to be on your podcast. Congratulations on your success so far, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much. So let's start with like I checked out, like I said, we'll have all this stuff in the show notes, but checked out his website. He's got some amazing books. They've been recommended by guys like Les Brown, which probably a lot of you guys have heard, which is pretty cool. So what kind of got you down that journey of going into coaching and public speaking and being an author? And has that been your passion your whole life, or has that been kind of something that changed at some point?
Well, it's certainly been a passion my entire adult life. And I mean, this goes back to early childhood, but just to make a long story a little bit shorter, I read a book in college called Think and Grow Rich that you may be familiar with, Napoleon Hill's book. And one of my fraternity brothers who had graduated a couple years earlier, but came back from time to time, and I had gotten to know him pretty well. He was in sales at the time, and he recommended this book to me. And I went to the library. We actually had it at our college library, and I checked it out and read it. And Angela, it just changed my life. And went out and got a copy, and have taken it all over the world and read it multiple times and underlined and highlighted. And certain pages are dog-eared, and the pages are yellowed now because this old paperback book is so old. I have other newer copies, but I still keep that original copy. And that's really what got me started on the road to personal development. And of course, over time, after I read that book, I started to read other books. You mentioned Les Brown and people like Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and Mark Victor Hansen, and then later Tony Robbins. I'm a learner. And so I consumed all of that information, every book that I could get my hands on, started attending seminars, and all the people that I just mentioned, I attended their seminars and started to learn and grow and really study the techniques that cause them to be successful and the people around them to be successful, and apply those in my own life, and started to have that same level of success. And it just grew from there. And I got into coaching, and we can get into the details of that. But all of that started with that person recommending a book to me, and me having the faith in his recommendation to actually take action, which is important, right? A lot of times people give us tips or strategies or recommend particular books or recommend people. And I know you and I have talked about a number of people who have influenced us, and some of the same people and some different people. And we get that all the time. But the people who actually achieve success are the people who take that information and go out and learn from those people, and then apply those techniques and tools and strategies in our own lives.
Man, that's so good. Why do you think, because you are a coach and you delved into this, why do you think people don't take the action sometimes? Because it is all about the action. All the resources are out there to create whatever life that you want, period. But it's about taking the action toward that. And so a lot of times it's hard, I think, for people to take the action. What do you think stops people from taking the action from your experiences?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And there are a number of reasons for that. I think maybe the most general reason is that people, they don't have the whole plan. They don't have the entire picture. And so they get stopped. Sometimes they get caught up thinking that they need to know everything before they do anything. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we get into, and I'm an analytical person, and so this happens with me sometimes, is I get into what I call the paralysis of analysis. And so it's, again, waiting. We're waiting for something. We're waiting for the right time, or we're waiting, we're in the midst of winter right now as we're talking. And so we're waiting for the weather to get a little nicer before we start exercising, or we're waiting until the fall for this to happen or that to happen, or we're waiting for a certain person to come into our lives, or we're waiting for that right book that's going to give us the answer that we've been looking for. And so what happens is we wait and wait and wait and wait. And as you said, and it's the most, people ask me all the time, because I've written a book, obviously, called Life Lessons. It contains 14 super important lessons about life, all the most important lessons, I think, about life. And people say, what's the most important characteristic of success? And it's sort of all of the things that went into that book, all of the things that go into your success and my success. But the one thing that's more important than anything else, and you mentioned it right off the bat, it's taking action. There's a story about, you may have heard about 5 frogs on a log. And if 2 of them decide to jump off the log, how many frogs are on the log?
Right, it's 5, I think, isn't it? They have to actually
do 5. That's exactly right. And I knew you would know the answer to that. Most people say 3, but just because those 2 frogs decided to jump off the log doesn't mean they did. And so that's what happens. Decision is very important. We have to decide that we're going to do something, but just making that decision isn't enough. We need to couple that with action. And so again, I think people are waiting for all the right things to fall into place, rather than just taking action and starting down that road to success and adapting as they go.
I think that's so true. I mean, even this podcast, it took a couple of years, because you were waiting for the right time and the right thing and just start something and just do something, which is what a lot of people struggle with. What is something that, when you started out, if you think back, because you've been doing this for a while, if you kind of trace back,
Sure.
that you found as a hurdle or something that you did have as a challenge? Because I mean, the farther you get down the personal development journey, I'm not going to say the easier life gets, but the faster you get through challenges, at least mentally. But when you started out, what were some of the challenges that you encountered, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I'll tell you though, I don't want to make it sound like I have everything figured out and I'm not challenged with all of these same things, because the reality is I'm challenged with all of these things all the time. Now, I'd like to think that I'm better than I was 20 years ago about moving into action, even though I don't have everything figured out. But I still can get sucked into that analysis, or still get sucked into waiting for things to be right. I remember, and you know that I have a podcast as well, and it wasn't something, I've been doing it about a year now, but it wasn't something that was on the top of my priority list. And mainly because, and I'm going to be defensive a little bit, there were other things that were a higher priority. So it wasn't like I was procrastinating, or that I fell into some of the traps that we've talked about already, but it wasn't going to happen when it ended up happening. And what prompted that was just a couple things fell into place. And I met a podcast producer and talked to him, and he's a fire kind of guy, rather than a ready, aim. And I'm kind of a ready, aim, ready, aim again, and then fire kind of guy. I mean, that's how I'm built. And I know that about me. This guy was a fire guy. And so we talked. The very first conversation we talked for about an hour, and I said, that sounds great. Like, when I'm ready to move forward with this, what do we do? And he said, well, I'm going to come to your house in 3 days, and we're going to shoot a pilot, and we're going to get this thing going. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean Thursday? Like this Thursday, 3 days from now? I said, I'm thinking that this is like 6 months away, a year away. And so those kinds of things really help. I think just taking the action. In that case, it was somebody else sort of pushing me. I have gone skydiving a couple of times. I've done it twice. For most people, once is like more than enough. Most people won't do it at all. I interviewed somebody on my podcast who has done thousands of jumps, and which is just crazy. But I remember the first time that I went skydiving, I was I was in the back of the plane, and there were about probably 10 people ahead of me, and we're all sitting packed like sardines in the plane. And at some point I look around the plane, and it's empty except for the guy that was with me and me. And I realized how what had happened to them. They had all gone out of the plane. And so we got to the edge of this door, and the guy, this was a tandem jump, and the guy said, okay, we're going to go on 3. And he said 1. And then I felt myself being pushed and like went out of the plane. And so it's helpful in some cases if you can create a structure. And this is where coaching really comes into play. It's where having even an accountability partner, if you say, well, geez, I can't afford a coach, or I have other reasons that coaching just isn't something that's going to happen at this point, you can find an accountability partner, and that accountability partner is going to do the same thing that guy did in the tandem jump. He's going to make sure that we go probably even before you're ready to go. But that's the great thing about mentoring and accountability and about coaching.
It's so good. And it's so true. And I want to go skydiving, so it's on my list. So now
Absolutely.
I know whenever they say 1, 2, 3, they're going to push me on 1. So I'm like, I'll be prepared. Maybe.
It's awesome. Just know that it's awesome. Whether you're ready for it or not, it's great and it's exhilarating. I highly recommend it. And it's really a metaphor for what we're talking about, Angela, that idea of, there are just things that are stopping us from doing what we want to do, from doing sometimes what we know we need to do to be successful. And it's hard. I mean, it's not, if it were easy, everybody would do it. And what I loved about skydiving is it's such a great metaphor for just being, talk about not being ready. I mean, it's the epitome of like being terrified, really, the anxiety of jumping out of a plane from 10 or 12,000 feet, whatever it is. But what's very instructive about that is it's exhilarating. And after you do it, you wonder, geez, why in the world did I take so long to do this? And we find that in life, don't we? Sometimes we wait and we wait and we wait. So you said you waited with your podcast. There are other things that I've been waiting on and just waiting for the right time. And the interesting thing, though, is when we free ourselves of that and we move into action and we start to go down that path, at some point we think, geez, what was the big deal? Why in the world did I wait so long to start doing that?
That's so true. And you mentioned anxiety jumping out of the plane. And I think right now, especially, a lot of people are struggling with anxiety and stuff like that going on with the world around us. And I always tell people, I'm curious what you kind of help people in those situations. I always tell people anxiety and adrenaline, I think, are the same feeling. I don't know if they're exactly the same physical thing. I've heard they're somewhat similar. I'm not really not good in that, but I tell people it's the same. So then don't think of it as anxiety, but think of it as adrenaline. And then you look forward to something instead of being anxious. How is something that you use or talk about? What are your thoughts on kind of anxiety versus adrenaline and helping people through that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, just talking about the issue globally right now, there's a tremendous mental health challenge. Right, with the pandemic and all that's going on. And I was on a podcast the other day and we were talking about this, the isolation for a lot of people. And you're out and you're traveling around and you're meeting people, whether it's online or in person. And I'm doing the same thing. But we have to remember that a lot of people aren't doing that yet. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people were for years used to going to an office every day to work for years and years and years. And then overnight that stopped. And those people, many of them are still at home working. And that's a big adjustment for people. It's a big adjustment socially. And some people do very well with that. The introverts tend to enjoy that and they get their energy from within. And from that that quiet time and being at home, being isolated, so to speak. And you know that for other people, for extroverts, it's literally driving them crazy in some instances, and people are very, very challenged with that. And the anxiety, you're right. As you're talking, I was thinking about butterflies in your stomach. And think about before you're getting ready for something big. So maybe it's a speech that you're delivering, or if you're an athlete, maybe it's a sporting event that you're getting ready to play. And most people have butterflies in their stomach, right? And I actually tell people that if you're gearing up for a big meeting or a big presentation or a big speech or a big sporting event or something along those lines, whatever you do vocationally or personally that would put you in that position, if you don't have butterflies, then there's something wrong. Because even the best speakers and even the most seasoned veteran athletes, when they're getting ready for a playoff game or a big match, or speakers getting ready for a big speech, they have that anxiety, they have that adrenaline. Or the skydiver, my friend Melanie, the skydiver who has done thousands of dives. And when she's up in that plane, though, she has that. It's a nervous excitement. It's butterflies. It's adrenaline. But the negative side of that, and it's the same coin, is fear and anxiety and consternation about this thing that's going to happen. And the way to get through that, one way to get through that is practice, right? So the first time you're giving a speech, if you've never given a speech before, if you've never stood up in front of people and spoken, it's super natural to have all of those feelings and to have it be sort of a negative feeling. There's a poll, and you've probably heard it, that people's biggest fear, even more than death, is public speaking. And the reason for that is because they're not used to being in that environment, right? So if you might be a great tennis player, but if you've never played in front of 15,000 people, then the first time you play in front of 15,000 people and cameras in your face and all of that, that introduces a dynamic that you're not familiar with. And so it's completely natural to have those negative feelings, that anxiety. And the more you do that, the more you can sort of adjust, and you can take some of those feelings fall by the wayside, so it's not quite as strong. Certainly doesn't impact you negatively in the same way that it used to. But you learn to sort of take that and package that and use that to your advantage. So use it to drive you and to get you excited and to get you motivated and to give you energy, so that when you step onto that stage, or when you step onto the court or onto the field, that you're actually taking all of that energy and it's or all of those feelings, and it's energizing you, it's jazzing you, and actually helping you to perform better than you would if you didn't have those feelings.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, using the feelings instead of like getting scared by them, like embracing them and moving toward them. And that's when because anything you want to accomplish big in life, you'll have those butterflies, which is yeah, I think that's really helpful for a lot of people to just embrace that feeling instead of being scared of it and running away from it, which is what the tendency is, of course, to feel that way.
Absolutely. And it's certainly easier said than done, which is why it's important to practice and move through that. The other thing, and it's just real simple, is breathing. Because what happens is when we have anxiety, we're not breathing normally. We hold our breath and we get our breathing gets choked up. And so if we can just pause and just take a minute and just breathe deeply and get our heart rate under control, get our breathing under control. And usually what happens, even I think about kids in school who are in speech class, and they're learning those techniques and those tools, and what happens is you get on, and this is true again going back to a sporting event on a court or a field or on a stage, is a couple minutes into it, all of those feelings just sort of fall by the wayside, and part of that is because you start breathing normally. Your heart starts beating at a normal rate. You start focusing not on all of those feelings that are getting in the way, but you sort of focus on the task, and then all those feelings go by the wayside.
Yeah, that's so good. Kind of backing up a little bit, something that you touched on that I'd love to touch on, and then we'll wrap up soon with some final points and stuff. But you talked about the guy that like just showed up, and I know this story and I think it's awesome. He just showed up like 3 days later, had everything set up. He started the podcast, and that's where that's at. How important do you feel associations are as far as all of the above in coaching in life, and moving forward and dealing with stuff?
Associations, I can't say it, but I know what it means. The term I use, Angela, is surrounding yourself with success. And it's about associations. And when people hear the term success, sometimes they have weird feelings about it, or they think success is about financial success or about business success, or that sort of thing. But surrounding yourself with success, for me, it is one of the most important things that we can do. It's the thing that, and you know me well enough, you probably know this, it's probably what I write about and talk about more than anything else. We have 4 children, and it's we've spent a lot of time, we've invested a lot of time in them, teaching them all kinds of things. But one of the most important things, maybe, I don't know if it's the most important thing, but surrounding yourself with success, surrounding yourself with positive people, with associations that serve you and that help you that really help you to become a better person. I mean, just to put it, to not even put it in the context of material success or, again, career success, but it's true in every area of life. And I was just writing an article, in fact, this morning, and I was coming back around to that topic. It was the title of the article is, "Who Are Your Cheerleaders?" And it's an article that's talking about the dynamics that exist in our family. I was in a conversation with people on my team, and they know our kids, and they were, one of them was talking about how, what our daughter was saying about us as parents and about her siblings. And so this conversation got expanded. And it's about the associations that we have in our lives. And it starts with the people closest to us. Now, we're very, very fortunate. And again, that's what this article is about, the dynamics that exist in our family and how we support each other and the things that we do to support each other. So we check in on each other regularly. We celebrate each other. We cheer for each other. When we're talking to other people about people in our family, we say positive things, and those things come back. And so imagine one of our children hearing one of our friends tell our son or daughter about something that they had heard about them from us and how that makes them feel. And it's just so critically important. One of the biggest, and Angela, I know you and I are definitely on the same wavelength with this, and we attend an event every year together. And one of the best things about that event is the people who attend, and that's surrounding yourself with success. And so it's not just the people that we surround ourselves with, it's actually the environment that we surround ourselves with too. And we need to think about that. So who are the people around us? Jim Rohn, who's another, it's been a huge influence on my life. And I had the pleasure of meeting him several times and attending events. And of course, have read everything that he's ever written multiple times. And what Jim Rohn says about this is he asks three questions. And the first question is, who are you around? And so it's who are you investing time with? And that's in your family, and it's in your workplace, and it's in places where you socialize. Who are the people that you're investing the most time with? And question number two is, what effect are they having on you? And so what happens when you're around them? What are you doing with those people? Are you sitting around with your family talking about other family members and criticizing them and speaking negatively, or talking negatively about what's going on in the world? Or when you go to the office, are you standing around the water cooler talking about what a great company you work for, and how to succeed, and how to do better, and how to support others in doing better? Or are you talking about, the boss who this or that or the other thing, or this person who did that? And so the second question is, what effect are they having on you? And then the third question Jim asks, and it's a really simple one, but it's critically important, and it's, is that okay? So is that effect that they're having on you okay? And what he means by that is it serving you? Is it helping you to become a better person? And is it helping you to add value in the world? So it's not, and again, Angela, you and I share a lot of traits and values. And for you and for me, it's not enough for us to have success for ourselves. You have this podcast because you are adding value to others, and you want others to be successful, and you want to do whatever you can in your podcast and in other ways to help other people to be successful. Because we know when we have a life of significance, that makes a life of success pale by comparison. And so we create that life of significance by adding value to others. And so if we're around people who aren't helping us to do that, then and I'll tell you, I think I'm a pretty nice person. I think
you are.
Would say I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm very, very rigid, and I'm unemotional about that point, Angela. So I refuse to be immersed with people who are negative people who are cynical people, and it's not elitist. I'm not suggesting that they're less than, or but there's no judgment whatsoever. I just know that it doesn't serve me, and it doesn't help me, and it doesn't enable me to add value to others when I'm if and when I'm consuming media that's negative, or I'm around negative people, or I'm in a negative environment. And so back to your question about association, it's critically important, because if we're hanging around negative, cynical people, then we ought not be surprised when people say that we are negative and that we're cynical and that we aren't getting to where we want to be in life. It's a huge problem in the world today, quite frankly, because we are living in a time and in a place where there's more negativity, there's more cynicism, there's more attacking other people for their views or for their worldviews, and it's just not healthy. It's not only it's not only not healthy for the people who are being attacked, but it's actually even worse for the people who are doing that, because they're just wallowing, they're bathing in that pool of negativity and cynicism. And what's happening is it's holding them back from their own life of not just success, but also significance.
And I think, like you said, it's not an elitist thing. And some people talk about that, but really, like for me, it's that I'm really weak. And so, I mean, really. And so if I'm around those circles or those areas, they'll drag me down. It's kind of like the weeds, they'll choke out the flowers. It's not that the weeds are worse or better. It's just that as a flower, I'll die So, and I think that that's kind of where I think a lot of people look at it like that. Like I've heard people say, you know, I don't want to cut people out of my life. I'm not better than them. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of, like, for me anyway, if I actually think about it, it's a matter of that I can't pull through it without being dragged down to that level. So it's more of like, I'm weak. And so I know what I have to surround myself with. Otherwise, I get taken down. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense to you too, but I feel like that's where a lot of that, it's not, like I said, it's not about being elitist. And I love, you know, let you say that, because it's not. It's that, you know, when you're around that, it drags you down to the level. It's kind of like crabs in a bucket. If you guys haven't heard of that, Google it. But it's kind of like crabs in a bucket. It's easy to be dragged down. It's harder to drag people up. So making sure you surround yourself with people that help you lift you up, and you can lift each other up together and grow together. I think, yeah, that's so important. So I have a few final questions, and then anything you want to leave the listeners with. So I have 3 final questions. So first question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, which a lot of people are, they're like, yeah, we've got to find our purpose. Well, what is my purpose? I don't know. What am I here for? I don't know. What is one sentence you would say that would help them?
Think about the difference that you want to make in the world and the impact that you want to have and the value that you want to bring and the legacy that you want to leave. And so if you were writing, if you were reading something that you hope somebody writes about you when you're no longer around, say at your funeral, what is it that you would want them to say? And I think that will move you at least in the direction of finding your purpose. Whatever you would want people to say about you, that's the start to your purpose, and you can expand from there.
I love that. That's awesome. Number 2, and so Brian actually has a quote book, so this is a good question. I'm not sure what he's going to say. What is your favorite quote, at least right now, and why?
Oh my goodness.
So many good ones, I know.
Wow. That is, you may have stumped me on that. I'm a quote junkie.
You're a quote person. I know, you have a whole book on quotes.
And I should be able to just rattle something off right off the top of my head. I'm going to cheat a little. And I'm going to,
like I said, check out his book. He's got a whole book of quotes. I just noticed this. I'm excited to get it. Quotes are amazing because they can inspire you at the times you need it the most.
I'm actually not looking. I wish I had my quote book. Geez, I give you a lot of them, but I have a quote right here. And this is a quote by Aristotle. So I'm not going to say this is my favorite quote, but it's a powerful quote. And I think it's appropriate here as we're talking about how to achieve success, how to achieve significance, how to add value to people. And the quote is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." Just to expand on that a little bit, I study excellence, and my company is called Life Excellence, and I study success, and I write about habits. So in Life Lessons, there's a chapter called Develop Success Habits and Practice Them Daily, and it goes into 15 success habits. And it's interesting when you dissect success, in my podcast, the Life Excellence podcast, I talk to people who have achieved significant success in a variety of areas of life. And what I like is having huge diversity in that. So we understand an Olympic swimmer and what goes into his or her training for success. But the reality is a lot of those success habits and success traits happen for professional musicians and happen for astronauts and happen for models and authors and people who are successful in virtually every area of life. They're practicing a lot of those same success habits. And there's an article, and I'm still digesting it, so I can't speak from a position of authority on it. But it's the gist of the topic of the article is the mundanity of excellence, mundanity of excellence. So mundane. And the idea behind this article, the author of this article studied elite swimmers, and for a long period of time, Olympic swimmers, high-level collegiate swimmers, club swimmers, and what he came around to the conclusion that really excellence is pretty mundane, the mundanity of excellence. So it's not, we have this idea that it's sexy and that people who are successful are glamorous and they're doing all of this glitzy stuff. And it's not that at all. And if you followed an Olympic swimmer around, Caleb Dressel, for example, and saw what he does day in and day out, you would actually conclude that it's pretty boring. Like, it's a boring life. I mean, the guy sleeps probably 10 or 12 hours a day, and because he has to energize his body because of what he's put his body through in training. And he eats and swims. So it's basically eating, swimming, sleeping, eating, drinking, and training and sleeping day in, day out, pretty mundane. And that's how success is. It's getting back to the Aristotle quote, it's developing success habits and then practicing them routinely. And that's the definition of habit, right? We start something and it's not a habit. We do it every once in a while. And pretty soon we're doing it as frequently as we need to do to move us towards success, whatever that looks like. And we develop those habits, and as long as we continue to practice those habits, then we continue to achieve that same level of success. So I went way off on it.
We could have a whole podcast on habits. That's a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
So down the road, maybe we'll have that, because that is a really good subject. And
like, I'm never going to ask him about quotes again.
No, that's so good, Brian. That's so good. And last question, and we kind of actually touched about this in the first question a little bit. What's one word or sentence that you want on your gravestone?
I'm teetering between excellence and value. So what I would love my epitaph to read is, he added value and he made a difference in the world. I mean, that's more than one word, but for me, it's about value. And again, if I can just expand on that just a tiny bit, my purpose, getting back to your question about purpose, is really quite simple. And I do a lot of things. Like you said, I write books, I speak, I host a podcast, I create personal development programs that help people to be successful. We have mastermind groups where people meet and collaborate to be successful individually and to help others to be successful. But my purpose is much simpler than all of that. And it's simply this: to add value and make a difference in the world. Now, would I like to do that in big ways? I'm writing a book right now that'll come out later this year. And would I love for that to be a New York Times bestseller? Of course I would. A lot of people would like to make a big difference in the world. And some of us will. And some of us, if we're evaluating it objectively, we would conclude, well, made a difference, not a huge difference in the world. But Angela, we all have the opportunity to add value every day to people on an individual level. And that to me is success. So in you and I are talking right now, I really hope that when we get done, one of the thoughts that you'll have is, he added value. That was time well spent. I'm glad that I'm glad that I invested the time to talk to Brian, because that was worthwhile. He added value. And we all have the opportunity to do that. And we, sometimes what happens in life is we're, in pursuit of those ways to make a huge difference, we miss the opportunities to add value to people on a transaction by transaction basis. So when you think about the people that you encounter every day, now if you're isolated in your home still and you're not getting out much, then I guess I would submit that you still have the opportunity to, hopefully you're interacting with people online, or you're interacting with people on the phone, having some kind of contact and communication with people, because that's like, it's like air. We need that to survive. And some people aren't getting nearly enough of that, and it's causing some challenges with their health and their mental health. But we all have the opportunity every single day, in a number of instances, to add value to people. And so that's what I try to do. I want to make the world a little bit better, at least in that one interaction with that one person. It's amazing sometimes what a smile does. And we have no idea what people are going through. And especially in the world today, Angela, we really, it behooves us to be more sensitive to that, to be more aware of that, to be more cognizant of that, and also have that play into how we interact with people. We don't know what people are going through. And so let's just try in some small way in every interaction to positively impact people, to add value to them.
That's so true. And that's the whole point of this podcast. So yeah, you definitely provided value. And I'm sure you'll provide value to a lot of our listeners today. Really appreciate your time getting on here too, Brian. Like I said before, rate, subscribe, review, all of those things. Tag us on Instagram. We'll have all the information in the show notes. And remember, like Brian said, let's go change one life today. And through doing that, we can help change the world. Thank you so much for your time.